That has to be one of the most frustrating golf shots you can possibly hit. You've hit a good drive, or your iron shot has come pretty close to the green. Your swing is feeling good, but then with one of the most basic shots in golf, you screw it up, and it is so frustrating. There's a couple of reasons, but today we're going to look at what the wrists are doing and how, no matter what level you are, we can improve and simplify this action and finally understand how to use the club properly without hardly any manipulation, so you can reliably make good contact and start chipping it closer without the fear of chunking. Really quickly, I just want to very simply explain why we're chunking it. Yes, there's reasons that are happening up here in the head, but more often than not, it's because we're not using this little club correctly. We are doing what you may have heard is exposing the leading edge. The leading edge of the golf club is this sort of knife at the front. The leading edge that has the first attack on the ball, right? That's what's making contact, or at least we think it is. And the problem is, the way most of you are creating your technique when you're chipping, you're either replicating a putting action a little bit too much, or you are initially using the wrists incorrectly. And when you have a technique that uses the wrists incorrectly, what can happen more often than not is you'll take the club back more steep. So you see how it's kind of pointing straight down now? I'm exaggerating a bit, but that's what it looks like. If my club face orientation is more towards the ball, what that's going to do is basically expose that leading edge to basically dig straight into the ground. That's not what these are used for, especially when we're just short, wee little distances around the greens. What we want to do is use the bounce, use the bounce. You've heard all this stuff before. The bounce is this stuff here, right? It's where the club is literally going to interact with the turf and strike the ball without digging in. So it's going to bounce off the turf a little bit. The leading edge is not making the first contact at the ball. So in turn, we have a correct contact. So the ball hits the middle of the face and the club reacts and bounces off. So we know why it happens. We know what we want to happen. Let's figure out how to do it. Just to help demonstrate this a little bit better, I'm using the hack motion device, which is really good because it helps you internally figure out what your wrists are doing, but it shows you with precision what is actually happening. And what we have here is a comparison to a major winner chipping around the green with a 56, which is what I have here. So it's going to show us what we're kind of ideally looking for and what the pros, the good chippers, actually do. And most of the time, it's not really what you think. So we're going to select this and we're going to be comparing now. So I move my hand and the wrist is working. Perfect. What we don't want to do is, as I mentioned, expose this leading edge. So it is literally going to dig down first. And that happens when we do a little takeaway, a little rehearsal that's more this manner. And this is what you'll see a lot of the time when people chipping. There's trying to rock their shoulders and do a kind of putting action this way. The reason it doesn't work is there's many levels to it. But basically we're exposing that leading edge, but also what can happen is we get a little bit tense and then we jam the hands forward because we realize we're a little bit too high here. So we either have to lower the hands, which causes us to hit too far behind, or we realize we're a little bit stuck and we can't, it's a bit awkward to get back at the ball, and then we'll actually catch it a little bit too clean because we're lifting up. And it all stems from what the wrists are doing. Because if we're having too much flexion and the back of my hand facing the ball, even on a short little shot like this, it's making life way too hard. So what do we do instead? We look at what the experts are doing and we can see that in actual fact, even on very short shots, there is a slight hinging, if you will, of the wrist. But more than anything, we're actually creating a little bit of what you'd call extension, a little bit of cupping. So we want to create more extension, which is the wrist moving like so, where there's a little bit of cupping, as you may say. And that is basically the sensation. And what that does, that opens up the club face, if you want to think of it like that. But if I just return back here, that's going to keep the face open. We don't want that, and that's what's going to cause a thin. So that's why you thin shots, because perhaps you're opening up the club face too much and then releasing through, and the leading edge is too high this time. We're leaning too back, and that's going to cause errors. So we need to find the perfect blend, and the perfect blend is to actually have wrist extension going back, is what it's called, where we have a little bit more hinge. We're letting the bounce get utilized, opening up that face somewhat, but as we deliver the club back down, we're actually going to return that club to square. So we can, with authority, create a very repeatable impact that is using that perfect combination of angle of attack and using the bounce of the club. So let's see what the hack motion will show us when we do it incorrectly. So when I've got that leading edge pointing down, when my wrists are pointing down, okay, it's very stabby. It relies on a lot of other elements to not chunk that or to not thin it. With the hack motion, we can see, even though I overemphasized it, there's too much flexion, which is, as I was saying, the face pointing down, the wrist moving this way, so it's there. We had 51 at address, which is too much. We had 50 on the top of the backswing, and we had 47 at impact. Very difficult to repeat. So let's see if we can get it within range compared to the major winner by adding a little bit more extension and a hinging of the wrist. Now I'm going to really try and exaggerate it, because that's what it feels, especially when I've been doing it a specific way for such a long time. So we do have to exaggerate to get the right sensations, okay? So I'm hinging back, more extension to deliver it back down to square. So I want to see, and I can see on the phone there, where I'm actually moving. And I don't want to focus too much on that when I'm obviously hitting the shot, but just to calibrate myself and just to feel what I'm trying to feel internally to match the numbers that we're after. So I'm going to set my hands back just a little bit further, because it showed me I had them too far ahead. There was too much flexion ahead. So I'm going to set them a little bit back, and now I'm going to hinge my wrist, creating a bit more openness as I go back, and it's going to help me deliver it back forwards. Perfect little spin, perfect little loft. Did I get it perfect? I doubt it, but let's see. So that's showing that's 37 at address, a little bit too flex at the top, and just a little bit too flexed at impact. So let's try one more. I didn't say it's easy, but it's simple, and you have to work at it. That's why we have really neat training aids like this to enable us to give us the feedback that we want, because that's what we're after. We're removing the guessing, okay? Yes, we want good results, but we want to be able to repeat them and understand why. So we're gonna set up a little bit further back here, hinge it up, and make sure that I release correctly this way. So what I'm trying to feel is a little more connected here, so that club is releasing through. Okay, so there we have it. Pretty good on that measure that time. We need to practice and rehearse, and that's how we're going to get better. But we can't just keep trying to figure it out. Using the hack motion is just one way that we can internally, with some verification, calibrate ourselves to actually make some changes that help our game and know what changes we want. So to stop chunking it, use less of a tilt, stop that back of the hand pointing at the ball and exposing that leading edge, and you are going to be making much easier, reliable chip shots, especially around the greens with your sand wedge. See you next time.